Welcome back to Module 4 on the economic valuation of the impacts of climate change in agriculture and natural resource management. We are now in Lecture 4, where we will be discussing the other economic valuation tools. As we discussed in the previous lecture, we can use these economic valuation tools to estimate the value of the impacts of climate change and also to estimate the value of the costs and benefits associated with climate change adaptation and mitigation. Earlier, we had these 6 categories of valuation techniques, and we are done with the first 2, the price-based techniques as well as the related goods approach. We will now go to the remaining 4 valuation techniques. Third on our list is the indirect valuation techniques. These seek to determine preferences for the environment from actual, observed, market-based information. They are called indirect because they do not rely on people's direct answers to questions about how much they are willing to pay or willing to accept for an environmental quality or change. Under the indirect valuation techniques, we have the surrogate market techniques, an example of which is the travel cost method. Here, observed behavior, such as expenditures on travel, can be used to derive a demand curve and estimate the value for an unpriced environmental good or service. The travel costs are treated as surrogate price for the non-market asset. The travel cost method may be applied in the following situations or sectors. We have recreational sites, nature reserves, national parks, forests and wetlands used for recreation, dams, reservoirs, forests with recreational byproducts, fuel wood supply, and even the collection of drinking water. Another method under surrogate market techniques is hedonic pricing. This attempts to estimate an implicit price for environmental attributes based on real markets where these attributes are traded. For example, clean air, peace and quiet are traded in the property market. Next, we look at market valuation of physical effects. These are considered to be the most straightforward way of valuing the environment. It observes physical changes in environmental quality and estimates what differences these changes will make to the value of marketed goods and services, for example, agricultural and forest products or fish. Next, we have the dose-response technique, which aims to establish the relationship between environmental damage, or the response, and the cost, like pollution, or the dose. The dose-response technique looks at the change in output due to a given level of the dose, which can be valued using market, revealed, inferred, or shadow prices. Examples are the effect of climate change on health, physical depreciation of material assets, aquatic ecosystem, and vegetation. The fourth valuation technique is the direct valuation technique, which is basically the constructed market approach. We use this approach when there are no market prices that can be satisfactorily used as direct measures or proxies of value. Here, we construct markets to estimate consumers' willingness to pay and willingness to accept. This is also called the contingent valuation method. The contingent valuation method is a method of estimating the value that a person places on a good. It involves directly asking people in a survey how much they would be willing to pay for or willing to accept to give up a good or a change in environmental quality. The contingent valuation method is also called the stated preference method because people are asked to state their preferences rather than inferring values from observed behaviors in actual markets, such as what we do in the travel cost method. It is commonly used for commodities that are not exchanged in regular markets or when it is difficult to observe market transactions under desired conditions. Applications include the valuation of public goods, such as improvements in water or air quality, and the provision of amenities like natural parks. We can also use it to value private non-market commodities such as reductions in the risk of death, days of illness avoided, or days spent hunting or fishing. Next, we go to the cost-based methods. These assess the costs of different measures that would ensure the maintenance of benefits provided by the environmental good or services that is being valued. The cost estimates are used as proxies for non-market environmental benefits. Cost-based methods are considered second-best valuation technique. As such, they must not be used when other methods are available. However, they are useful when there are time and resource limitations or when data sets are questionable. We have several methods under the cost-based methods, the first of which is indirect opportunity cost method. This is used to estimate the value of a non-market environmental good or service, such as fuel wood, based on wages forgone as a result of labor or time spent to harvest goods. We also have restoration cost, which is based on the idea that given a change in the resource, one measure of the benefits provided by the original intact ecosystem is how much it would cost to recreate the original system. For tropical forests, the restoration cost method entails the restoration of the original forest cover. This may be difficult or almost impossible because there are aspects that simply cannot be restored, and this may not be useful at the ecosystem level. However, restoration cost may be useful to value a particular good or service. For example, watershed protection based on the cost of replanting trees. Third, we have replacement cost, which is more realistic than restoration cost. Here, we replace specific ecosystem functions or assets with man-made production processes and capital. The cost of replacement is an estimate of the affected resources, value, and services. The replacement cost method is applicable to valuation of particular direct and indirect use values of forests, such as carbon storage and soil nutrient cycling. Next, we have relocation cost, which considers the cost of relocating and re-equipping communities so they obtain a similar level of fit in their new location. An application would be the assessment of direct costs of establishing new protected areas that require the resettlement of forest-dwelling or forest-dependent communities. Fifth, we have preventive expenditure, which is also called defensive expenditure, mitigation approach, or avertive behavior. Here, we estimate costs of preventing a reduction in the level of environmental good or service. The preventive expenditure approach examines upfront payments paid to prevent or avoid environmental degradation. Now we come to the sixth and last valuation technique, which is called benefits transfer. Benefits transfer is usually resorted to because of data, budget, and time constraints. Here, we adopt values that were generated